Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. We'll get started in just a minute. We're just waiting for some more people to hop on in. All right, well, let's get started. We're live on Facebook. Thanks everyone for joining us today. For those of you who don't know, I'm Stephanie Rennie. I'm the Director of Operations at the Tri-Cities Chamber of Commerce. Through the COVID pandemic, we've been here to support businesses in every shape, way, form that we have been able to, and we continue to do so. And the most recent information we have for you is about the WorkSafe guidelines that were announced last Friday. And we will be doing an event with WorkSafe BC next Wednesday, so that you can ask your questions directly to an advisor there and get some information to find out if you are compliant and safe to open. Today we have a great presentation lined up with Cultivate advisors on time and priority management, something that's very important right now. We will be taking questions throughout the presentation, so please just pop them into the chat, and David will help moderate them with Roy. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce David, who's the relationship manager with Cultivate. David.
Hi everyone, I'm glad you could all make it to this webinar today. We're really happy to get involved with Tri-Cities and keep driving some learning and growth during these strange COVID times. So some of you will be familiar with Cultivate Advisors. We partner with business owners to help them scale through to their vision. And what we mainly focus on is implementing systems and processes to build efficiencies in businesses and drive success. And today we have one of our top advisors on the call, Roy Flemming. So Roy's favorite stuff to kind of work on with clients is growing sales and building up teams and people. And also he's known for systemizing. He's fantastic at that. So Roy's background comes from the restaurant world, systemizing, managing franchises. So he's overseen over 30 million of annual sales, and is actually the proprietor of a Tuck in downtown Gastown, a fantastic restaurant. So I know he's going to lead a great session today. Yeah, so without further ado, here's Roy to lead this webinar for us. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, David. Really appreciate that. Stephanie, thanks for having us, and really excited to partner with this Tri-Cities and offer our time and share some of the learnings that we've obviously gotten through the years, and then share what I'm doing with my clients and trying to help them make sure that they're maximizing their time and prioritizing all of the different things that keep coming at them at any given point in their business lives, and personal lives as well. And so for me, I mean, the key for this to go really well is that everyone please feel free to throw your questions into the chat. I know it was mentioned earlier, but we want this to be interactive. We want to hear what you think, and we want to make sure that you're getting as much out of the content as you possibly can. And without anything else to really say, let's get going. When I think about time, it's the one equalizer, right? Like, we can't make more of it. And there's only so many hours in a day. And so, it's all we have, really. And when we spend time with the people that we care about, we put our lives into things, or we put our time into things, we're sharing pieces of ourselves. So that's why it's so important. And as I go through this, I think, hopefully at the end of it, you'll find your own way to make sure that you're getting the most out of your time. But If you haven't thought of time the way I'm about to show it, it may spark some real curiosity, and I'm hoping it starts to impact change if it's something that you're really focused on or you want to focus on. And so, as I mentioned, it's one of those things that we all seem to have the same amount of, right? There's only a certain amount of minutes in a day, 168 hours in a 7-day week. And so if you've got goals and tasks that you want to prioritize, how you choose to spend those hours is critical. And really how you think about maximizing your time. With all the different things that come at you to draw you away from your focuses, planning and being focused on how to plan becomes ever more important. And so as I go through this, I'll talk more about looking backwards, really looking at what the end goal is, and then working backwards in smaller chunks and breaking things off into segments. So you end up hitting the goal without feeling overwhelmed by thinking of all the things in between to get there, and then having this conflation of ideas that never really comes to fruition. It's really about taking small bites to hit that overall big task and goal, and then planning the hours accordingly and linking them together. And so one of the tools that I use with my clients to sort of bring this home, to have them think about your life and what that means, and spending time and how much time we all have, is this little grid that we've made at Cultivate, and we call it the 100 Years of Life. And it's just a cool way to take a look at, in any span of a lifetime, if we were to live to 100, what would that look like if you were to map it out on a grid? So on the left-hand side, you'll see we've got numbers, and it's 1 through 100. And then as we look horizontally, those numbers that slide across from left to right essentially equate 1 year. That's 52 weeks. So every line is 52 weeks. So if you think about a lifetime, by the time you're born, if you go through the formative years, you're in elementary school, you're bearing this, learning who you are, you get through high school. It really takes about 20 to 25 years for you to kind of get on your feet to determine who you are as a person, what your long-term focuses are, what you want to have achieved as goals by the time you hit a certain point. And so when I look at this grid, 25 would be right in this area here, which is a huge chunk of your life, just to sort of get to a point of understanding where you want to be and what you want to achieve. And then by the time you actually start to do that, you hit your 20s, maybe you get married, maybe you have a family, start your career, all of those things, you've done school, you really start hitting momentum by the time you hit your 30s, for most people. And so what I've done here is I've got this sort of light shadow that indicates 40. By the time you're 40, you're pretty clear on what you want. You know what you're achieving. You're well on your way to achieving those things, whether it's, you want to retire by a certain age, or you want to, you have acquired a few businesses in your professional life, or you've now gone back to school. Whatever you've decided you want to achieve by 40, you know what that is. And so for me, for example, this dark shadow is 55. And so my goal is to be financially independent by 55, with the thought of retiring completely by 65. So if I look at that and sort of slide this down to show you, if I live to 80, and the point is to retire at 65, that leaves this much space between 40 and 55 to achieve those goals, right? So that's 15 at 52 weeks. Based on how long it takes to just figure out what you want to do and then start putting the pieces in place, focus becomes even more important. Because when you look at it on a grid like this, it's not a big chunk of the overall picture. It's actually a pretty small chunk, and it's pretty intense. So maximizing your time and being prioritized is critical. And so that leads me to where we are now, which is, we're living through, as David said, these weird times where we're trying to figure out, okay, what's the new normal? What does that look like? Some people are working from home. Some people have had to close businesses. And in my case, I have a restaurant, and we had to shut down just based on COVID protocol. We're in the reopen phase, but certainly trying to figure out that new normal. And so working from home, you've got kids, you've got those responsibilities. You can't change that. But what you can change is how do you prioritize yourself when you're sitting in your own space trying to have as much impact, and in most cases from afar. And that's where spending time on what you can control becomes even more important. The current market environment, you can't change that. There may be some impact we can have on our spending habits and those kinds of things, but you can't control that either. And so what that leads to sometimes is, the fear of not being successful, the fear of not knowing what to do allows us to, procrastinate, right? And we've all been through that, where you're like, I'm not sure, I'm unclear, where do I go now? That uncertainty can be quite a cloud. And so, when we think of someone who's a non-procrastinator, they tend to make rational, decisions. They do things that make sense, and they think long-term, as opposed to the procrastinator's brain where, and we've all been there, it's so much easier to have a phone call, to go watch a movie, to be distracted from the focuses and goals and tasks that you have. And what we call that is the instant gratification monkey, where it's so much easier just to go play, right? And this was taken from Tim Urban, who in 2016 did a great, TED talk on the procrastinator's brain. So if you have a chance to go on YouTube and take a look, it's actually pretty good. But that's just to say that we've all been through that, right? Where it's so much easier to be distracted. And so even more so, why we need to start prioritizing. And so how do you do that? So to be effective at deciding what you want to do, figure out what the results are that you want to achieve first. So if it's you want to increase sales, what are the steps to increasing sales? Okay. What sales level do I want to increase it to? What's the dollar value that I want to achieve? And then work backwards from there. So the dollar value that I want to achieve is X, the percentage I want to achieve is X, and then put the steps in place to get there. Do I need to hire a sales rep? Okay, great. What do I need to do that? I need to place an ad. Okay, when do I want to place the ad? And you start outlining all of the specific steps to help to achieve that specific goal. You have to be super disciplined, right? So it means carve out time in your calendar to do that. Tasks and sticky notes and those kinds of things are nice, but the problem with those is that they can easily be discarded and not done. So you need to have the discipline then to put it through and actually to achieve it. Say no, right? If something doesn't fit into your calendar that is not a priority, and yes, it's something that's nice to do. It may be someone that you want to keep happy, and you want to make sure that they feel that that they're important. And so you say yes to it, and now it starts throwing off the ultimate goal. Those types of things don't make sense, and so that's where having SMART goals are really important, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So you look at the overall goal, make sure it's a SMART goal, have the disciplined habit to put it into a calendar, and then work backwards from the goal to the tasks and break them up to small bites. The value of doing that is quite simple. You're now starting to map out how you are going to be successful. You're going to script it. You're going to write that down, right? So by actually breaking out the task and the goal that you want to achieve, you're now creating a script. What's great about that? It's repeatable, right? You now have an actual outline or a guideline to figure out how you're going to continue to be successful. It allows you to feel in control of your business and the outcomes that you have in your life. And that's something that, when I think about businesses and all the things that come at business owners, or even people who are just not even owners, just working through whatever company they work for, it's easy to feel out of control when you don't have a script, when you don't have things in a calendar, when you don't have things organized, because it's a feeling of overwhelming activity that you don't know how to start. And that's where you start to get into the feeling of procrastination, because you don't know where to start and you fear the outcome. If you're a team lead, understand what delegating means, right? And so when you lead a team, if you've ask for a specific task, but don't give them the roadmap to get there, then you're going to end up in a situation where you may not have achieved those goals. So be effective when you delegate, right? The same map and roadmap you would build for yourself, the goal, work backwards in small bites, make sure you're sharing it with your teams. And so they have a roadmap for success. The value in having something like that is it allows you time to think, right? And so there are 4 quadrants I'll talk to you later when it comes to being able to problem solve and to be in charge of your business. But by planning it out, it allows you time to see problems before they arise, right? And we've all heard that simple line, right? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And that's the idea here is by giving yourself a script, now you've got yourself in charge of the bus versus running alongside the bus. And so these 4 quadrants that I was speaking to earlier really sort of outline where most people find themselves. And it doesn't matter where you start, which is the most critical piece of this conversation. We've all been in some of these quadrants, sometimes 1, 2, or 3 of them at the same time. We've all been there, I know I have. But typically, the ideal quadrant would be the Q2 quadrant, where you're dealing with important things that are non-urgent, right? So it essentially allows you to be ahead of it, you can plan, and you can be in charge of the actual goal that you're trying to achieve. Most people tend to find themselves in either the Q3, Q4 quadrant because of either it's not being prepared or not having a script. They get pulled in other directions. So how do you stay in that Q2 quadrant, right? Q1, sometimes you can't really control that, right? An emergency happens, you have to deal with it. And so you try to plan and prevent, but things come up. Q1 often is not within our control. But the Q3 and Q4 quadrant, you're looking at interruptions, people knocking on the door, people who are expecting your time to be available at all times, people who want to solve problems by making it your problem, the time wasters. Those are the ones we want to avoid. And I'll show you a quick trick of how I do it. There's more than one way to do that, but I try to stay in Q2 by doing 1 or 2 simple things. And so what I do is I block time in my calendar to spend time thinking about what I'm doing. That slush time, that time to process information is so critical to be able to have that idea polished and ready to go so you understand what you're trying to achieve. I also try to think back, what works and what doesn't work. And the reason to do that is sometimes when you're running up and going and you don't have time to look back, you don't often see the corners, right? The very obvious things aren't obvious. And so spending time thinking, pondering what's working, what's not, allows me to make better critical decisions. And then if I'm having challenges with planning, and it's an ongoing, battle where it's making sure that I'm always taking time to think about planning, what's getting in the way, right? And if it's something that I need to take care of, then take care of it. If it's something that can wait, communicate effectively to the people that need you, so they understand that you are interested in helping, and schedule a time to do it, and let them know that you schedule your time to make sure that you're more effective, and that it's not important, it's just not important right now. And so having that confidence to say that can be difficult, especially when you're a business owner, right? We all want to be all things to all people. But if you give them a time where you will get back to them and you stick to it, they will learn how to use you. And that's the most important part, is that you start training people around you and how to use you within the realm of the structure you've given, which is a calendar. When you think about your time now, some of the things that I would say that you probably want to be thinking about, and it's high recommendations. There's no right or wrong, but these are the things that I think when I talk to my clients, you hear the most. Feelings are important, and feeling good about how you manage your time is something that you need to think about. And, first thing I would say is, how do you want to feel about your time? Do you want to feel like, hey, I wasn't effective, I didn't hit my targets, I didn't achieve the goals and tasks I had today, I had too many time wasters and too many interruptions? Or do you want to feel, hey, I hit my targets, I want to hit my goals, I did hit my goals, I had 7 out of 10 tasks done, and that's a pretty effective day. And so there's 3 out of 10 left, I'll move to tomorrow, and I can still continue to be effective. If you're feeling like there's not enough hours in the day, then that's a sign that you may need to sit back, regroup, figure out what's going wrong, and then dig in a bit and figure out how you can now change some of the habits that people have around you and that you've now developed for yourself. What areas do you feel are impacted the most because of the habits and priority management right now? So, when you look at your business, when you look at your time, think about specific areas to help you drill down and narrow in if you are feeling like there's time wasters and things aren't being done in the way you'd like or in an effective manner. And when you think about those areas, just the same way you were planning your goal and take small chunks and bites to be able to analyze how to get to the goal, when you figure out the areas that are impacted, do the same thing and say, okay, well, why am I now having success here? What is the specific interruption, or why isn't this becoming a priority? What are the specific habits that I'm seeing that are not aligned with this piece of my business to go well? And so slow that down. And I'm purposely speaking slowly to give you that feeling, is slow it down. Like, allow yourself the time to really analyze it and think about how you can change those habits. And some simple things like, how many hours a week do you want to work, right? And think about the reasons why you want to work those hours, because that will help you share the story with people around you. And so they understand that, they're a priority, but within a certain boundary, so they know, again, how to use it. And then what will you do with the other hours that now you've decided you're not going to work? It's equally as important. So you're not getting pulled off into work situations when you shouldn't be there. And so this whole concept of thinking about time, managing your time, seems pretty high level. But once you start to really unpack what you want to achieve, it will make more and more sense. And so you may ask, well, why are we starting only with time? We talked about goals, but we seem to be spending a fair amount of it on time. And as I said before, it's all we have. And so studies have shown that if we could spend 10% of a 40-hour work week on high impact items within your business, that you will see better results. And essentially what they're saying is, if you can create a shift within a calendar year of, working just 10% of that calendar year on the high impact items, which is about 4 hours a week, 200 hours per year, that's a month and a half that you're actually going to be impacting your business at a high level. And that's where the game starts to shift, where people's businesses really start to take off. So imagine, we're not saying that you need to be spending 100% of a 40-hour work week crushing high impact items. So we're saying pick the things that are the biggest chunks, break it down, and put 10% focus per week on those big things. So what does that look like moving forward? You got your goals clearly stated. Work backwards, right? So you find the actual goal, work backwards, small chunks. Pick the things that are urgent and make small changes, right? You're not going to be able to move the earth all at once. It's critical that you be realistic with yourself. You have to give yourself room to make mistakes and trip and fall. We're all human. But think about making small changes over a long period of time. And so that leads me to priority management. So now we talked about time and how to use that. And it's like, how do you make things a priority? And so I've got a bit of a video here that I'll play for you. It's 2 minutes. It gives you a sense of what that's like when you think of what's really important in your life and what matters the most.
Okay, when it comes to time management, we all have the same amount of time. This is our time. And if we fill it up with all the little stuff that we have, we want to do. This is like spending time on TV and video and just stuff that maybe isn't the most important things in the world, but it's fun to do, little stuff like that. And then these are the other things that are kind of important. We'll make sure we get those done. We'll put those in and add those to our time. That kind of takes up a little bit more space. And now we've got these big rocks. These are the things that are most important in our life, but we've already started filling up our jar. And now we want to put all the important stuff into our time, but we have a problem because it's not going to fit. What would happen if we take our big rocks and instead we've got the same amount of rocks, the big rocks, medium rocks, and all the little stuff in life, same amount of time as we had before, but this time we're going to put the big rocks in first. This is the most important stuff to us. Put the big rocks in, and it takes up some time, but we're going to put them in first because they're most important. And we're going to take the other stuff in life that's also important. That to our schedule. Goes in. And now we're going to fill it up with that other stuff that we really like to do. We want to have fun. We want to use our time wisely. And as you see, once we put the big rocks in first, all that other stuff, we have time for it. We can make time for those things. And we can get it all in. But we need to decide, what are the big rocks? And put those in first.
Right. So, I mean, in my life, I think back to my story, and I was one of these people that, you know, just wanted to be all things to all people. I had a lot of energy. That's part of being young, I guess. But over time, as you know, I started to have other pulls on my time, it became evident to me that I need to be better at prioritizing. And so, having conversations with the people around me to let them know what I really thought were my priorities, bringing them into the conversations, and sharing that with them was part of this start for me, is to begin to make changes in how I prioritized. And so this is a simple video that gives a sense of that, and I'm hoping that you took something out of that. And so why manage priorities, right? And it's about helping you grow productively, and if you know financially is a part of that, so be it. Helps you make better decisions more quickly, and gives you that focus on what you should be working on. So now you've found a way to have a calendar, you've got tasks and goals. Now we're just going to prioritize them and get that 10% of that 40-hour work week on those big rocks, and slowly move through those things to make sure you're giving them the attention they need in order so you can have the most impact. Allows you to have more control. So the things that matter the most are being taken care of, and then you can sift through the small things and make decisions because you've got more time, because you'll be more effective to decide what other things you want to do. And so next steps, and I had this, there's no actual JIP for this, for what you're feeling. You may be going, I'm feeling like this sounds good, but how do I do it, right? And so one of the first things that I'll say is, if you aren't using a calendar, and I think most people have some form of a calendar, but don't necessarily have it as structured, start using one. And this is one that I did for one of my clients just to help her with her time. She has a realty company, and she's got 3 or 4 staff, and she was feeling like she's being pulled in so many different directions. And so in this one, I literally have what time she wakes up, her travel time to the office, when she gets there, what she'll be doing from certain blocks to certain blocks. She leaves time for a lunch break. She's got what we call slush time packed in here, so she can be thinking. If she needs to support her team, that's part of slush time. And so what she did is we created this template for her. She put in some more meat where she thought she needed to add more meat, shared it with her team, and then said, so this is the calendar that I'm using. I want you to use it. and this is when you can have access to me. And by doing that, what she saw was one, they were apparently feeling frustrated because they didn't know when to use her. They didn't feel like they were a priority often, but because they knew when to get to her now, they knew that they would be a actual priority. And then, moreover, it allowed them the opportunity to not only schedule themselves in, but then look at her calendar, mimic it, and structure their time all around her time. She had less interruptions. She's already seen that because everything's structured. And she's had less time wasters because people aren't expecting her to solve everything. They're now having to think on their own because she's just simply not available in the time frame that they may be asking that question. So they're solving their own issues more often, and she's patting them on the back because they're being more effective. And so, well, how do you do that? So in my schedule, I plan an hour per week just to plan, right? And I spend for the next week, and I spend 2 hours planning for the whole next month. So that's easily 4 hours a week in planning just for the week prior, and then another 2 hours for the next month. So 6 hours a month in just planning time, and that's scheduled in for me. That's what I need. That may be different for what your business or town requires, or for what you need. Block scheduling, it's an iterative process. Things change. You'll have to incorporate and adjust over time to see what works, what fits, and what doesn't. But the point is just to start somewhere. And then put anything you need to do into the actual block schedule in the calendar. I have here, to-do lists don't exist. Scheduled times do exist. And the problem with, to-do lists is if you don't put a time to it, they often drop off. And it doesn't mean that you won't ever miss something that you put into your calendar, but the point is by seeing it, you know what you should have done, take that item, then move it to the next block of time that you can actually get to that item. And so by having that sort of process that you're working on an ongoing basis, you will start to hone, you'll start to sharpen the edges, it'll get more effective, and it'll start to actually have the impact that you need. But my one ask or call to action for anyone on the call is just start. Just get the calendar out, get some stuff in there, carve out some time, put some tasks in. Make sure, again, the tasks link to the overall goal, and there's small bites, but just get going. Some tips or some quick hacks: schedule recurring events in batches, right? So create routines. Monday morning, I do this. On Tuesday afternoon, I do this. And so when you walk into your day, you know exactly what you're going to be doing because it's repeating over and over again. Include your personal goals. So if it's, hey, I want to take a vacation, plan that into your calendar, plan that into your overall sort of picture so everyone knows what your goal is and you're planning around it. So you're actually seeing the road to it. That'll be not only motivational, but inspiring as well. Know your kryptonite, right? So if, the phone is something that's, in your way and it rings, or you like to look at the pretty pictures, or like, Instagram and Facebook, right? Put that phone away, right? Know what it is that typically throws you off. And then all over again, nothing moves all at once. Give yourself room. It's not an all or nothing, sum game here. It's about moving the pendulum one sort of tick at a time. I thought I would just allow people to throw some questions out and, obviously capture any thoughts or answer, anyone's sort of high level thoughts on what we've talked about so far. Got nothing?
No questions recorded to date. No one's chipped in yet. I haven't seen anything on the Facebook Live either.
Fair enough. I'll keep rolling. So, some support tools. Lots of tech out there, right? If you're running a business, you probably already have a CRM. If you don't have a CRM, what they're great for is helping you manage contacts and information and invoicing, and it's a big funnel to be able to streamline some of your processes. And so if you don't have a CRM right now, At Cultivate, we did a big, review last year, and these are sort of the ones that we thought were the most relevant. And then the top three were, we felt for most businesses were Pipedrive, ProsperWorks, and then HubSpot. So obviously, if you already have one, we're not saying to change it, but if you don't have one, you may want to consider tech as one of the tools, to be able to sort of move your time management, priority management forward, and not get sucked into the vacuum of having to do a ton of paperwork, because that's one of the barriers or the distractions I often hear, is that people are mired in paperwork, right? So that's one of the simple tools. And there's a ton of project managers out there. So, I have a lot of clients that use Trello and sort of a big dashboard where you can have your jobs listed out, all your tasks planned out, share it with your team. They know what all the tasks are in order. They know what the overall goal is. You can break it out into little bite-sized chunks. And so another quick, hack is, try one of these. They're not typically too expensive. They're all easy to navigate, and depending on your business, there's so many apps out there that I can't imagine there's not one that you would find that would actually suit your needs. So some quick recommendations there. So time to take a look in the mirror, right? What are your current capabilities, right? What are your skills? If you look at different segments of your business, between leadership, sales, productivity, marketing, all of those different pieces, finances, what are your skills? Where do you want to go and why? Like, what's your overall goal? Do you have the skills in your toolkit now? Build your development plan. If you think there's a gap, tie that into the overall goal, and then get help, execute, grow. And then you keep revisiting the plan over and over again. And it ties in the same way to your block scheduling, to your priority management, and to figuring out what those tasks are to finalize, sort of, just to get to your goals. If you use this, take a look in the mirror tool, where you're looking at your current skill set and what some gaps may be, work on yourself and keep sort of revising the plan. You should be able to get there and give yourself room to trip. That's critical. I've said this a couple times, right? It's about graduate learning. So you may be at a higher level on this ladder. You may be somewhere between beginner and expert. You might be at the expert level. If you're at the expert level, great. Share your expertise with the people around you to help them be better at task management and time management. If you're a beginner, don't be afraid. Just start with looking at what you want to achieve. Take a look at your overall goals and then break them down. It's about graduate learning, and again, it never really ends. I mean, I'm always focused on sharpening my edges, and I focus on having a calendar. I focus on block scheduling. I focus on being prioritized. But there are times where, again, that crisis happens, and I have to rejig and remanage. Give yourself that space to be able to do that. And that leads us to the end, which is, good luck. We're here obviously to support. The purpose of this was, I know what it's like sometimes when you're in a silo as a business owner. You feel like you're in a vacuum, feel like you're the only one. Everything's being, you're being pulled in all these different directions. You're not alone. Everyone is experiencing the same thing. We're all trying to figure it out. The point of the whole presentation was to say, focus on the priorities, pick the big rocks, right? Break things down into small bites, identify your gaps, know your kryptonite, get help, and just get started. Thanks for your time.
Roy, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I mean, I know you obviously deal with a lot of clients and different people have different issues, but I mean, what do you find is like, and maybe from this whole presentation, what would be the one takeaway like that you would prioritize from all that you've kind of gone through there? Like if you can implement one thing.
Yeah, I think the one thing, that I would say is slow it down for yourself. Know what you want to achieve. Like when I show you that 100 years of life grid, there can be so much time wasted, not even necessarily being clear on what your goal is. Get really razor sharp and clear on what you want to achieve. Slow it down and plan it. And then reach out for tools and help, the block scheduling and all those kind of things are ways to make your time more effective to achieve those goals. But slow it down. Be sure you're clear on what you want for your business and for you personally.
Great. That's funny you say that, because that's actually I'm always I'm kind of very intense with my day, and I always find and from what I learned in Cultivate, slowing down was the main thing that actually helped me. Taking the time to actually take half an hour to just really think, as opposed to take action. So it's funny that you say that as well, because that was my main takeaway as well. We have a question here from Mr. Cannell, or Mrs. Excuse me. How far ahead do you recommend block scheduling? Weekly, monthly, or 3 months?
Right. So I block schedule 1 month ahead, and I repeat certain things for up to 6 months. So I know, for example, that I'm going to need to plan email time and respond to email time every day. So that's planned out for 6 months ahead. And then things like meetings, invites, things that pop up like events and those kind of things, I plan those a month out. Recurring meetings, again, those are already scheduled, usually 1 month out, up to 6 months. And then weekly, I just review that. So 1 hour per week is spent on reviewing next week's calendar, and 2 hours a month total on monthly planning, so a month out. So 1 hour a week plus 2 hours per month, just in block schedule planning.
Fantastic. I don't know if we have any questions, unless anyone wants to chip in now. Stephanie, did you have any questions yourself, or anything you were curious about?
Oh, you're off mic.
I didn't have any specific questions, but this has been really helpful for me, especially through just going through COVID and having 8 million priorities at the same time, of especially like government announcements, getting stuff out, having other projects, deadlines, managing events. We've done 41 of these webinars in the last 2.5 months.
That's busy.
And we usually do 80 events a year. So and half that in the span of 10 weeks, 12 weeks. So a lot of this I'm going to take and put into practice. And Mike chatted me halfway through, and he's on our BC Chamber AGM webinar right now, but he's going to be watching this after to help balance as well, because we've just been flying by the seat of our pants. So
great. And that, there's lots of other tools too, just with how to break out your priorities like into chunks. So if you need help with any of that, I have tons of those.
Thank you. I think Mike and I are going to have a Monday morning planning session.
Lock it in. We have another question here that popped up. What do you recommend when a task goes past your block time?
So if you're over time, meaning it's spilled into another block, I think is what they're saying.
Yeah, I think so.
Right. So that can happen. Yeah, if it's a big rock and you think that it's going to move the needle within your business, as long as you're not encroaching on anyone else's time, so you haven't promised someone else your time and now you're reneging on that promise, because I'm big on training your team to respect time, and so or the people around you to respect your time. So if you don't respect theirs, then you will never get that back. They won't reciprocate. But if it's an open block and you're supposed to make phone calls, but you think this big rock is going to move the needle in your business, I say stay on it. And then if you think you still need more time, it's okay to shift things. It is okay, as long as those things that get shifted don't drop off. So now they get shifted, but they get put into another block of time. So it's those two things, because I was working on that big rock, great. Now put it into another block. Don't just leave it in the old one and now it gets missed and gets forgotten. Great.
I might chip in a little bit there as well. One thing I find really useful is every day I schedule in 30 minutes of slush time. So if something goes on further than I like it, I can just shift that bit into my slush time. That's just free time for me to work on something that came up on the day that I wasn't expecting, or if something is taking a bit longer, I do it in that kind of half an hour block.
Right. And that's awesome. I think having slush time, having time to plan, time to think, I said that earlier, right? You need time to process. And so slowing down so you can go faster is the theme. It's like I'm actually going to be more thoughtful about what I want to achieve, put a plan in place, and then execute, versus spinning in circles trying to hit 100 home runs at the same time. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, yeah. And one other thing that I actually try to do is every week smaller rocks that I know that I mightn't get to that week, I have them listed out on a separate list, because the nature of my business is I've got a lot of calls and I'm speaking to clients all the time, and there's often cancellations. So if someone cancels, I can pivot onto those smaller tasks, and that's really useful to keep me productive as opposed to just kind of slipping away.
Yeah, that's another great idea. Awesome. I totally agree with that. And then sometimes what I do is on that Friday afternoon, you do 30 minutes per day. I do a 2-hour block of slush time on Friday afternoons where I kind of review those smaller tasks, because I know I've taken care of all the big rocks. And so sometimes that slush time on Friday afternoon for me is, hey, I got some time to do all these smaller tasks. Well, actually, I'm way ahead because I was so focused on the big things most of the week. So, it's all about what works for you. And it sounds like, David, you found some tools, especially the way your side of the business works. It's quite fluid.
Yeah.
So you need to have gaps to be able to flex, right? Which is, again, the beauty of iterating on the fly and adjusting and reviewing what works.
Okay,
awesome.
Great. Well, with that being said, guys, if you want to get in touch with us, we'd be happy to share some of these slides or some templates, whether it be calendaring or some of the technology. Roy, we can share some more information on that. Or if you want to learn more about what we do, feel free to throw your email either on the chat now or on the Facebook Live, and we can reach out to you. That'd be fantastic. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Cheers.